All right, it is time again for another episode of Video Game Club. Happy Friday and welcome everyone to episode 29 of Video Game Club. As always, I'm your host Tyler, and I have with me today Gomez's number one fan, Austin.
Hello, you're looking nice and flat today.
Unfortunately, Mox isn't able to make Video Game Club this episode, but we do have, freshly back from his hiatus from the deepest, darkest depths of the internet, your friend, my friend, Phil Fish's friend, we'll see, Chris.
My batteries have been recharged. I've returned full and ready to tackle the Fez.
Hell yeah. Now, before we get started talking about Fez, what have you guys been playing besides Fez? Any side quest stuff? Let's go with you, Austin.
Yep, so today, actually, I finally went and recorded the gameplay for Wind Waker HD. Man, do I really hate the opening of that game. And I've played through that opening several times, never actually gone to finish the game, but, dude, really can't stand the opening of that game. Other than that, though, I just yesterday, I've been working on this for a few months, off and on. I finally beat Super Mario Bros. 2, the Japanese version.
Oh yeah,
from the Famicom Disk System. I've been playing it on the Game & Watch,
which is different than the All Stars version. I think that needs to be said.
Yeah, it is. So, like the All Stars version, if you're playing Super Mario Brothers: The Lost Levels, like they make some of the stuff a little easier. Yeah, it was a brutal game. I had infinite lives, I will say that, but no save states. And man, that was a really difficult game. I feel pretty proud to have finished that finally.
Is the infinite lives thing part of the Game & Watch? Is that like just a feature? Okay.
Yeah, that's something that was added in.
Nice. What about you, Chris? What have you been playing?
I've been dumping a lot of time into Dota 2 lately, unfortunately.
A lot of additional time?
Yeah, well, because I had gone away from Dota for a while. It had been a few months since I'd played, and then I think a month and a half ago or so, I started playing up again. And that's been an experience, up and down, just like Dota always is. But
was there anything in particular that brought you back?
They had a new Dota's version of the Battle Pass.
Oh, okay.
One of their tournaments was coming up, and it's got a Spectre Arcana item in it that I really want, because I really like Spectre.
Fair enough.
I think Dota created the concept of the Battle Pass, right?
They were one of the earliest
ones. Or at least one of the first.
Yeah. If not the first, they were definitely on the edge, on the bleeding edge.
Oh yeah. I've been playing some Wind Waker, streaming it on my personal channel. I think I'm gonna try and stream the whole thing. And I got through the beginning part, and I'm very happy to be past that. Feels very good. Besides that, I've been playing more Yakuza Like a Dragon, and I just unlocked the job system, which I feel like I have so many hours in that game, because I do from playing side quests and stuff, but geez, it's like it reminds me a lot of Persona, how you'll be playing in your 60th hour, and it's like, oh yeah, and here's this mechanic, and here's the tutorial for it. You're just like, what? Yeah, but as a reminder, we're here to talk about Fez, and the nominations for this episode were actually Fez, Sonic Adventure, and Anodyne, and if you've been paying attention to Video Game Club, you know that we already did Sonic Adventure, and that's because Sonic Adventure and Fez actually tied, so whenever Austin had his second pick, because we take turns, he decided that he was going to pick Fez, and so that is why we are playing Fez. It looked like that we were going to have a tie again, but maybe not. We will see. At the end of the stream here, what's in the lead for our next game. As I mentioned before, though, this is Video Game Club, where every 2 weeks we discuss a game voted on by our wonderful friends in the Bombchu Discord and discuss that game right here on twitch.tv/BombchuTV. If you can't catch us live, no problem. You can also find us on YouTube, and you can also find us on podcast services around the world, like Spotify and Apple Podcasts and Google Podcast stuff. I don't know, just search it. You'll find it. It's there.
We got links around.
Yeah, they be there. And that is very, very exciting. I'm super excited for that. Now, let's jump into Fez. So Fez is a puzzle platformer developed by Polytron Corporation, published by Trapdoor, released initially on the Xbox 360, April 13th, 2012. Before we move forward on that, did anybody buy it at launch?
Yes.
I did not. I
did.
I remember hearing about it at launch, but I did not pick it up because I'm not big on puzzle games.
Yeah, same. I'm curious, Austin, about your experience.
Yeah, I played the demo for it first and reached a certain point where I was just like, oh, I'll buy this. Bought it, and I was just buried in it for like a week or two until I had done almost everything.
Wow.
There was one thing that I opted not to do, but we can get into that later.
Talk about, yeah, definitely. The game also came later to PC, PS3, PS Vita, PlayStation 4, Switch, iOS, and almost Austin's favorite console, the Ouya. Almost. So what was going on in 2012 in North America? Well, for hardware, we had the PS Vita launch in North America, the 3DS XL, and the Wii U. What a year for hardware.
Wow, that's a horrible year. That might be on record for the worst year for hardware.
And there were years...
the Wii U's great. Get out of here.
I'm a big defender of the Wii U, but I mean, like, if you're going to talk about, like, big releases, if the big release of your year is the Wii U, that's a bad year.
For software, we had Persona 4 Golden, which is now on PC. It was locked to the Vita for a very, very long time.
Yeah.
Super Hexagon, Journey, Dishonored, Borderlands 2, Far Cry 3, Mark of the Ninja, Cave Story, and many more. I mean, pretty good year software-wise.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah. Did you guys play Persona 4 Golden at all?
Yeah, oh, God, yes.
I played a little bit of it on Vita.
What about you, Chris?
When that finally came to Steam, I put in, like, 70 hours in, like, the first week that it was out.
Whoa. All right. Did you also play Persona 5 as well? Or?
No.
Dang.
Persona 4 Golden is the only Persona game I have ever played.
Wow. That's awesome. Did you end up completing it?
Yes, I ended up getting the true ending, did all the content with all the Golden exclusive character.
Jeez.
Yeah, I dived deep and hard into that game.
Dude, we have to get you playing Persona 5 next.
I would love to play Persona 5 if they'd ever put it on Steam.
Yeah. Never say never. Might happen. We'll see. And the engine that Fez was made in is an in-house engine called Trixel, which was developed, I believe, in XNA stuff.
Initially, yeah. It was eventually ported to other stuff, but that was why it was only on 360 for some time.
Yeah. So let's dive into Fez here. So Fez is a 2D puzzle platform game that's set in a 3D world, if you can wrap your head around that. And that's kind of like the main, not like main draw, but that is definitely a unique feature of this game. You play as Gomez, who lives peacefully on the 2D plane, just, enjoying his life, until he receives a red Fez. And when that happens, he witnesses the breakup of a giant golden hexahedron that tears the fabric of space-time and reveals a third dimension. After the game appears to glitch, reset, and reboot, the player can rotate between 4 2D views of the 3D world as 4 sides around a cube-like space. So you're kind of seeing it here if you are watching the video version. If not, you basically are just rotating the screen, and it's like a 3D space, but you can only see it in like 2D. And this mechanic here actually reveals new paths and different like platforms that like maybe weren't accessible before, but now they are because of like what the perspective is. And that's kind of the basis of all the puzzles in Fez.
Yeah, so like depth doesn't really have any meaning for the 2D plane that you're on. So if there's something way off in the background, then as long as it looks like it's just to the right of you, you can jump over to it. And then when you change the perspective again, you're very far from the platform that you were just on before.
Yep.
So it's pretty cool.
Yeah. The object of the game is to collect cubes and cube fragments, which accumulate to restore order to the universe. Explore every little nook and cranny, trying to find these cubes to put them all together. There are 64 in total, 32 cubes and 32 anti-cubes. Yeah, I mean, what else can be said about Fez? There's a lot of puzzles in the game that features like glyphs and treasure maps and different chests, secret rooms. You're not really like told. There's no like hand holding at all, I would say. There's also like lots of like the Tetris blocks. What are they called? Tetrominoes? Is that what they're called?
Yeah. Yes.
Yeah. There's a lot of like references to that. There's QR codes. There's just all kinds of like weird puzzle stuff like that. I don't know. What else would you say like puzzly stuff is there?
I would say, in order to reach the credits of the game, you only need 32 of any type of cube, right? And so the regular cubes you are pretty much always going to find from doing like platforming puzzles, which once you kind of wrap your head around the main mechanic, those are not too hard to do. The anti-cubes are more mental puzzles. There's like things you have to solve, codes you might have to break, or things that you'll have to kind of learn or figure out. And so those are tougher to do, but they're more satisfying, at least in my mind. But they're almost entirely optional. You don't have to go for those, but if you decide, like, if you have fun with that, it's something that you can do, and that there's a lot of it there for you. And then there's 3 other challenges in the game that don't even, they don't count towards achievements, they don't count towards story progress at all, and they are much tougher, but they are like extremely optional, and again, only there if you really want to do it. So it does a good job of balancing its difficulty in you'll really just do the parts of the game that you want to do.
Yeah. And also like you some of the anti-cubes can't be found, like the puzzles can't be solved until you beat the game, right? Some of them?
That's correct. So there's a new game plus, and it adds a new mechanic to the game, and that mechanic is required in order to solve some of the anti-cube puzzles.
Yeah, so I guess you could say like the second half of the game then would be more challenging, right? Just because, if you're going for the full cubes stuff.
Yeah, and when I say new game plus, like you keep all the stuff that you had. You keep all your teleporter stuff, like your map stays the same. I don't even know why they call it New Game Plus. You repeat like a 3-minute section of the game, and then after that, it's just you're back in the world and you have this new mechanic.
Yeah. Something really interesting about Fez is there's no enemies, no bosses, or really any punishments for like failing. And you also like quickly respawn when you die, which I love that. It's kind of a lot like Super Meat Boy. What were you gonna say, Chris?
I was gonna say, yeah, it's the perfect length of death and respawn loop that encourages trial and error approach to platforming and puzzles. It was really nice to see them get that pretty much perfect.
Yeah, and I think that's important because the game, like, it doesn't really focus on like your skill level of platforming. There is like definitely some there, but the game does have like a lot of trial and error when it comes to like puzzle solving as well. Some of them. And I think dying is part of that. Whenever you're trying to solve those puzzles. Yeah, I mean, there's some little callbacks. You can definitely see that it's inspired by like Legend of Zelda with like the whole treasure chest animations, Super Mario Brothers. There's like a really cool area that I don't want to spoil just yet. That's definitely a callback to some, and we'll talk about that later. So let's talk about the development just a little bit, without talking too much about Mr. Phil Fish, just the overall development of the game. If you want to dive into Phil Fish, there is a lot there.
There's a dearth of information available.
Yeah, and
I would recommend, if you are interested in Phil Fish specifically, and specifically this game, Indie Game the Movie is a really good source of information, and it doesn't. I feel like I have a more well-rounded view of him, although I mean, it's still clear that he is quite a character, and some of the stuff that he says is is pretty out there.
We won't exactly quote him, but I do have some stuff that I think we should touch on. Which we'll talk about. So Fez was in development for a total of 5 years, which was actually a pretty long time for an indie title, like with this much exposure at that time. Now I feel like it's kind of pretty common, like, oh, you know, he'll finish it when it's ready sort of situation. We've seen that a lot with that space game. God, I can't. What is it called?
Space scam game.
The Star Citizen?
Yeah, yeah.
Yeah, oh yeah, Stars. That just sounds like scam so much to me. I don't know why.
Oh man, we're gonna have some mad people in the comments.
Bring it on.
But yeah, it was quite some time. It began actually as a collaboration between Phil Fish and this other developer, Sean McGrath. They worked on McGrath's idea for a puzzle game in which a 3D space was viewed from 4 2D angles. Unfortunately, their partnership broke down due to creative differences. However, the entirety of Fez's design, story, and art descends from that game mechanic that they worked on together, which is really cool. Fish continued to work on the project in his spare time and solicited for a programmer on DeviantArt, where he found Renaud Bedard, and he worked with him to finish the project. And Fez was first announced in July of 2007. So that's the old 5 years there. It would get delayed and bunch of stuff like that, which we can talk about. Something that was really interesting that happened is that this game is pretty hyped. Do you guys remember like the hype around this game?
Yeah, I remember hearing, like, even not being interested in this kind of game, I remember hearing a lot about Fez in the lead up to its release.
Yeah, it was hard to kind of get away from if you were following any games journalism at all during that time. It was nominated for 2 awards at the at GDC Indie Games Festival, and it was funny because Phil Fish said that his employer didn't permit him time off to attend the awards, and so because of that, he quit his job, and he claims that's when he became indie, whenever he did that. When he quit his job, he received a Canadian government loan to open up Polytron Corporation as a startup company and began full-time work on Fez. This is something that I think, if you are Canadian and you're doing indie dev, I think this is a resource that kind of gets looked over a lot. I know some buddies of mine in the gaming industry, they always talk about this, like, oh, if you're Canadian, like, you may be able to get like, you know, a nice loan or like a grant from the government to help you with your game, because they it's kind of similar to the stuff that's made in Georgia. I don't know if you guys know what I'm talking about.
Oh
yeah, but they want to fund, you know, art and stuff that, you know, shows that their country is supportive and all that stuff. So interesting that he was able to use that. In July 2009, Polytron announced that Fez would launch in early 2010 as an XBLA exclusive. Development continued with an experimental spirit until the company ran out of money. Fish would borrow money from his friends and family, keep the company open, and he actually considered canceling the project as well. However, a developer/publisher, Trapdoor, offered to help him out. And Phil Fish really feels like the Trapdoor partnership rescued the game. I looked into Trapdoor, very small. They did like a game with EA, they had Fez, and then they had another game that was canceled, and then the company like fell apart. That was it.
Oh, jeez.
So kind of random.
Just popped up out of nowhere to say Fez, and that's it.
Yeah. Other stuff around Fez, like something that I thought was really interesting was that Phil Fish, he hoped that players would discuss Fez's nuances online after its release, and players collaborated online for a week to solve the final monolith puzzle by using some sort of like brute force attack. Austin, I think you were following the game whenever this whole discussion was going on, and
yeah, I took part in that brute force attack.
Oh,
it was quite an experience.
Later on in March 2013, Phil Fish mentioned that there were still some hidden in-game secrets that remained to be found. I don't know if all secrets have been found. We may never know. Phil Fish may never say.
He also may have just been trolling everybody.
Yeah,
either way, he'll
just
definitely
don't know.
never say.
Yeah, who knows? In August 2016, a final patch for the computer release of Fez was released, and they were able to like leverage open source software for performance improvements, which is always a good thing. Is there anything else with the development that you guys would like to talk about?
Do we count the music as part of the development?
Yeah, go ahead. I actually saved this part for you, Austin.
Okay, so the soundtrack was done by Disaster Piece, and I was not familiar with him until the game came out, but if I remember correctly, a little bit before the game came out, there was like this indie game music bundle. Like before Humble Bundle was like really a big thing, like their bundles were kind of starting to become a thing, and there was one that showed up like once every year or two, and I think the first one had Fez in it, and the Fez soundtrack had to be pulled because like there were some secrets in the soundtrack that people were figuring out things about the game ahead of time, so it had to be pulled, but it got added back in later. It's a superb soundtrack. Disaster Piece went on to do Hyper Light Drifter, as well as he did the movie soundtrack for It Follows.
He also, I'm pretty sure, like, I read that he didn't even see the game when he made the first song, Adventure. They just, like, described it to him. I'm pretty sure I read that, but... Yeah. Definitely give it a listen. And there's also been, like, what would you, like, remix releases, or, like, what would you call them?
Yeah, so Disaster Piece put together it was 2 remix albums. It was one project, but split into 2 albums. It's FZ Side F and Side Z. There's a secret Side E, which I think is representative of the secret third dimension. But what do I know? That's my guess. And it's got all sorts of contributing artists from other indie game cred. So it's also really good. I really hope it gets pressed on vinyl someday, but it probably won't. But that would be super dope. And Brian Lee O'Malley did the cover art for the game.
Oh, hey.
Who at the time was blowing up big because of Scott Pilgrim. He was the creator of the Scott Pilgrim comic and the illustrator.
Very cool. So let's talk about the release and reception really quick and how it sold. So it was pretty favorable whenever it was launched. It got 8s and 9s. A lot of people really liked the presentation, the art style. A lot of people really praised the 2D, 3D gameplay mechanic, which we talked about. The soundtrack, people loved the little Easter eggs. Some of the things that people didn't really like, though, is that apparently the XBLA version had a lot of bugs at launch that was causing some issues. Did you encounter those?
Yeah. So not a ton of them, but like they started to become more apparent the longer you played. And basically this was at a time when I think your first patch was free. If you were a developer, I think you could do your first patch for free, and any patch after that was had to go through all of the certification and testing and all that through Microsoft, and it was something like $100,000 to pay for all that certification and everything.
I forgot you had to pay for patches on that.
And
that brief time period or whatever it was.
Yeah, and Phil Fish was like pretty critical of of that, I remember, right?
Yeah.
That was part of...
Yeah, very extremely.
One of his like headline quotes was, "I'm not paying $40,000 to patch this game," or something like that.
Yeah.
And so basically that really soured his relationship with Microsoft, and that's probably why Xbox One and Xbox Series are like the only systems that you can't play Fez on today.
Yeah. Which is a real bummer.
Even though it's on 360 and they have backwards compatibility, like he's not even letting it go through backwards compatibility on there.
Yeah.
Which is wild.
So let's talk about how Fez sold. So it sold 20,000 copies in its first day, 100,000 in less than 2 months, 200,000 within a year, and 1 million copies by the end of 2013.
Ooh.
I would say that was probably, for an indie title, a success. It was also like one of the best-selling games on XBLA. Man, around that time, that's when just Xbox Live Arcade was just getting like tons of bangers, and
that was the golden age for Xbox Live.
Oh, for sure. Fez was cited as an inspiration for games such as like Monument Valley, Crossy Road, Unfortunately, though, Fez being such a great game, a lot of people really wanted Fez 2.
Yeah, it sounds natural to want a sequel to such a hit, beloved game.
Yeah, it does. Unfortunately, though, we will never see a Fez 2. It was canceled.
We caught a glimpse of it. A glimpse.
Oh, yeah, that's
I
true.
would say, did anything ever
There was a
come out of that?
trailer at E3.
Okay.
There was a trailer.
And it was hype as hell.
Yeah.
It was such a great trailer.
And it
breaks my heart.
And it was canceled following a Twitter argument between Phil Fish and a video game journalist, Marcus Beer. The journalist was criticizing Phil Fish's response to questions about Microsoft's Xbox One self-publishing policy change. And Fish replied on Twitter with, that he just, doesn't like that the industry's negative, and basically announced Fez 2's cancellation and was like, he's done. So
there was a little more to it than that. We don't have to get into what exactly was said.
I did want to say that, Phil Fish is kind of known for making these outlandish, aggressive statements. But, in this situation, I'm totally, he should not have just deleted Fez 2, obviously, but...
Yeah.
He was totally... Because this guy was, asking him about what Phil Fish thought about Xbox One or something. It's number one, who cares? And number two, he's not obligated to give you, whatever your quote is that you want for your article.
Yeah.
And this guy just, for some reason, decided to lambaste Phil Fish for not responding to his questions. And it's I'm kind of on Phil's side on this. He overreacted way too much, but...
Oh, yeah. And especially with the response that he gave.
Yes, and then, his follow-up response did not help the situation whatsoever, but...
Yeah.
All right, so I'm gonna...
Oh,
go ahead.
Sorry, go ahead.
No.
I was gonna say, I get it. I get quitting... the desire to quit the game industry. What a toxic...
Oh, my. Yes.
...place to work.
Jeez.
And on top of that, even fans, his site was being just flooded with people just throwing comments he had said in the past back into his face, and just a ton of just toxicity. And it was if I was doing that, I had a really successful hit, and I was just getting nothing but toxicity thrown at me. Okay, yeah, I don't have to do this anymore. Why would I just make this my life, right?
Yeah.
At least we got to see that sweet trailer.
Yeah.
And hey, at least he walked out on top.
Yeah, true. With that being said, I think it's time to get into our personal takes of Fez. I'm going to throw that spoilers tag on. Austin, I know you mentioned you're going to be a little light on spoilers because you don't want to spoil the rest of the game for me and Chris.
Yeah, so I know Chris and Tyler both, they didn't get all of the cubes. They got a few more than they needed to get to the credits, but there's a lot of anti-cubes that they missed, so I'm going to have to be a little bit light on the spoilers here. Lighter than I would have liked, but there will still be some stuff that I'll get into that's that I don't think y'all would ever have found anyways.
Well, what? Okay, with that being said, why don't you start us off?
Okay, where do I begin? So, Chris, I know you found this, but Tyler, I don't think you ever found what the significance of the tetrominoes were.
I did not.
Okay. So, your first kind of intro to the anti-cubes is just sitting right in the achievements, and this is how you can kind of tell this was a game made specifically for the 360, back when achievements were just the biggest thing on the planet. There's just sitting right in the achievements, one of them just has this series of right trigger, left trigger inputs. And it's oh, let me try that. And you get an anti-cube out of it. So Tyler, I know you played it on Switch, and I had to kind of nudge you to go look at the Xbox achievements because Switch doesn't have achievements.
Right.
And apparently it's still hidden there, but it's hidden in the cover art of the Switch version. And it's super tiny. Almost nobody found it there.
Oh, jeez.
Yeah. And that's just kind of your first hint of this set of puzzles that are going to come at you for the anti-cubes. A lot of them involve 8 button presses that you have to do in a specific sequence to make an anti-cube appear in a specific area. And the tetrominoes are a big part of that. So Chris found this last night, but there's like a shrine where you can basically get a way to translate anytime you push a button, the shrine shows you a piece. It's like, oh, okay, so this is what those translate to. But even with that, you don't know how to read the codes because there's all these like strings of tetrominoes everywhere. Mm-hmm. It's like, what do I do with these? There's rooms in different places. A lot of them are in the first area that give you all these hints about specific puzzles in the background of these rooms. And unless you know what you're looking for, it's just like, oh, it's just some art or like some little flavor stuff. But it's like, oh no, this is all like required stuff to really 100% the game.
It's like, yeah, this isn't just a background poster. That's the Rosetta Stone.
Yeah. And so what was really cool at launch was the community was really helpful with people who were trying to figure out, like, what am I missing here? What am I missing in this room? So you'd get online and try to discuss with people on the message boards, and nobody would just flat out just give you the code. They wouldn't just be like, okay, you just gotta just input this set of commands and you'll solve it. They would actively go out of their way to avoid spoiling the solution for you, and they'd ask you some questions like, okay, have you found anything like this yet? And so for me, for example, like, there's an entire language in this game that you can translate, and I found the Rosetta Stone for it, and I didn't understand how to translate it. They give you a really great hint, but I assume both, like, so I know Chris is. Tyler, I assume you're familiar with the quick brown fox jumps over the lazy dog?
Yeah.
Yeah, so it's a sentence that has every letter of the alphabet in it, and I was not familiar with that concept. So there's a giant stone with a ton of text on it, and right next to it, there's a dog sleeping and a little fox that just keeps running back and forth and jumping over it. And so, like, I had found everything I needed, but I wasn't familiar with the concept. And somebody was just like, "Oh, well, just by the way." And so that was the tip I needed to go, and I took all these notes for this game. I had a notebook just full of stuff to solve all these puzzles, and God, it was just such a wild experience.
Reminds me a bit whenever I played Hacknet, and I was like writing down all these things.
Yeah,
because I didn't want notes to take up memory, so I was like, I had this paper, I was just writing down tons of stuff. But anyway, yeah.
So there were also, like, all of a sudden, some of the puzzles were just not getting solved by the people were getting stumped, and some people, like people with all of the cubes and anti-cubes, were getting stumped on these last few rooms. And so it was, people were trying to figure out what is this, what's going on here. And there are these 3 heart pieces that you can get that they don't do anything for you. There's a room that they will appear in together, and that you can go look at them, and they change your percentage a little bit. Like, they up your, so you can get 200 something %, and those count towards that, but like, they don't do anything for you. They don't count towards achievements, and they are ultra hard puzzles. One of them you can probably solve, like, if you're really noticing stuff, but the other 2, it's like you have to do a lot of research. So the community really worked together in a lot of ways to solve those. But the final one is this multi-part puzzle, and it took a lot just to get people to figure out how to make the puzzle appear, which is this black monolith. And this is where people brute forced the solution, because we could not find any reasonable explanation. Like, people were scouring everything. Mm-hmm. I was checking for updates throughout class every day, just looking for any information of, like, this was bothering everybody. It's this black floating monolith. It's the final room. It's the final puzzle. And so somebody finally just got fed up, and they made a website that would generate a string of commands for people to try out. And once you had tried it, you would click, okay, I've tried this. It would just assign them to you randomly. Mm-hmm. and people would mark, okay, I've tried this one, and I think it would even verify, like it would suggest it to a few people to like make sure that trolls weren't just like, And it took some time, but eventually we found the combination, and part of the problem was it's the only combination in the game that's 7 inputs instead of 8.
Oh my gosh.
Yeah. And oh my god, you have to. So part of this puzzle, it involves the new mechanic you get in New Game Plus. Mm-hmm. You get these glasses that allow you to see the game in first person mode. And so to even make the monolith appear, you have to go to a specific spot in this room. Like you have to line yourself up in that 3D mode into a specific spot, input a specific code. That makes the monolith appear. You have to go to a different spot specifically to input the other part of the code. And so every time you move, you have to realign yourself to try again. Oh my god. It was brutal. It was brutal. And
Jeez.
Everyone was like, what's in the monolith? What's behind the monolith? And it was a piece of heart. And that was it. And everyone goes, okay, what's the heart do? And no one could figure out what the heart does. And to this day, it's just, okay, the heart goes and floats in the fountain. And that's it. So it's really just there as a puzzle for you to solve. And the explanation that people have kind of backwards engineered for what is supposed to be the reasoning behind that string of commands is really far-fetched. And I don't think anyone would have ever figured out without a brute force. So I don't know if Phil Fish intended for that to be brute force by the community or what. But my goodness, it was just like, I once the combination was found, I was so dissatisfied. I was just like, I'm not putting the combination in. I'm just not going to open the monolith until somebody figures out why it was actually supposed to be that. And so on my Xbox version, I just never got the last piece. And it was just... So at the time, I was pretty salty about it. And this time going through it, I was just like, it's really cool that existed. Like, that was a really cool experience to go through. But people were trying to figure out all sorts of stuff. There's a book in the game, so there's the artifacts that you can find, and the artifacts, people were trying to find meaning from those because you don't do anything with them. One of them is, so there's a skull. I don't think there was any use ever found for that, but one of them is basically the letter cube, and it just has all of the game's letters on it, but that's their writing tool, because if you flip it in different directions, then that's what makes all of the characters in the game. There's the number tool, which once you figure out the number system, it's like, oh, that's really cool. Which I won't spoil how to do that. But there's also a book that has a ton of text in it. And when people tried to translate it, it was complete gibberish. And so that was its own code to solve, where it was like...
I watched a video on how they solved that, and that was nuts.
Yeah, it's insane. The people who figured that out are insane. They're insane people.
Yeah.
And it still led to nothing.
Yeah.
It didn't lead to anything.
Worth.
Oh, dude, it was so wild. I'm trying to think. There's pictures hidden in the soundtrack, like if you put it through a spectrogram or spectrograph or whatever it is. There's like a number of pictures hidden in there.
Oh my!
That
like the Doom soundtrack, similarly.
Kind of like that, but like it's more like full-on pictures instead of like a little small image hidden in there. It's like an actual like JPEG image that's hidden in there, and those led to nothing. They were all just like things. So there were a lot of like red herrings, but they were still really interesting to find, and it's just really cool that all that is in there.
I feel like we've lost a lot of that, like as like a gaming community, like with guides almost day one when a game comes out. You can almost find like any puzzle you're stuck on.
And so much stuff just gets data mined out to where it's like
that too.
You can just figure out everything. Before the game releases, they data mine through the demo or through the beta, and it's like, oh well, we know everything that's going to happen. We know all the solutions to all the puzzles.
Yeah, and so eventually this did get data mined to like try and find any remaining secrets, and I don't think anything was found there. So that's part of what makes people think Phil Fish was just kind of like trolling people with that comment about there still being undiscovered secrets. But I mean, maybe there's something there.
Yeah.
But people went looking for, like, you can find what the codes are for each room, and like there wasn't any special code or anything like that for like the heart room, for example. So just it's all it was such a cool thing to be there for at launch. And so anytime I try to get people into the game, I'm like, I try to emulate that experience of like, okay, if you need any help, like if you can't tell if you're able to solve this room or not, like just let me know, and I'll ask you some questions. And oh yeah, you can't really solve this one yet.
Yeah,
you should probably just move on.
So I guess it's a 0 out of 10 for you then, huh? You just hate it.
Are we giving our takes right now? Because
that's what you've been doing this whole time. I thought
I was just spoiling the hell out of the game. But I mean, I adore this game. I'm glad it eventually came to PC, because I know Phil Fish at one point said it was never coming to PC because PC's the platform for doing Excel spreadsheets. But eventually he caved, thank God. And amazing soundtrack, great art that's just like gorgeous to look at. All the biomes are super cool and have like interesting little mechanics to them. I love this game. I love the secrets. I love the experience that I had going through it, trying to like, they give you just enough like, oh, what is that? And you just feel so cool whenever you find an anti-cube. It's just such a feeling. What a rush. I absolutely love this game. Playing through it again was just like a really wonderful experience. And I don't know if I have a 10 out of 10 game, but this is probably one of the closest ones to a 10 out of 10 for me. I feel like I can't give a 10 out of 10. Like for something to be a 10 out of 10, it certainly was a joy for me. But I think I'm going to give it like a 9.5. 9.5 out of 10.
All right. Chris, what about you? What's your take on Fez?
So, I did not play this game at launch and had not played it until this was my first time playing through it. And it wasn't so much the association. I know there's a lot of people who refuse to play this game on principle because of its association with Phil Fish.
Yeah.
I think that's dumb. I'm a big advocate of separating the art from the artist. But it's a puzzle game, and that's never really been my thing. I like some puzzle games, but for the most part, they tend to frustrate me when I can't figure out the solution. Fez never frustrated me. It was every time there would be moments for like a minute where I would be like, I really don't know where I'm going, or I really don't know what I'm supposed to be doing. Oh, but here's a doorway that leads to an entire new part of the map that I've never been to before. Mm-hmm. Full of cubes to find and whatnot.
Right.
So it never got frustrating. It never got overwhelming, for more than like a moment or two. Fez is as hard as you want it to be. You only have to engage with the game as much as you want the challenge to be there. If you don't want to go for those anti-cubes, if you don't want to solve these puzzles and translate and decipher all these puzzles, you don't have to. You can just grab the cubes, you can grab whatever anti-cubes you happen to find along the way, and get to credits and get a very satisfactory ending. But if you find yourself intrigued by those puzzles and want to do more, it's always there for you to try to wrap your head around some of the more complex puzzles. I remember I think my favorite anti-cube that I found so far was I walked into a room and there was some kind of statue or monolith or something, and as I was standing on it, my controller began to vibrate. I was like, oh, that's interesting. I don't remember a whole lot of vibration in this game, and I was like, wait a minute. It's vibrating specifically the left and right motors in my controller. I bet you that means something. And so I start turning the rooms along with the vibrations. It's like, oh my god, there's an anti-cube. This is amazing. And it's that sense of satisfaction you get when you figure out the puzzle for an anti-cube is...
Yeah.
It's so satisfying. It's one of the most satisfying feelings that you can get in a video game. It's truly special. Yeah, I liked Fez way more than I thought I was going to. Like, I knew going into it that it was a well-designed puzzle experience kind of game, but I figured, this is not going to be the kind of game for me. I'll play through it to satisfy Austin, and that'll be it. But, like, as I'm playing through, I'm like, man, the graphics are really, like, charming, and this music, the soundtrack is just incredible, and these puzzle designs are so well designed. Oh, I wish we were going to get Fez 2, but yeah. I'm glad we at least got Fez 1, because that was... For anybody out there who has reservations about this game based on the history of its creator and anything like that, I definitely think people should give it a shot, because even, 7 years later, this game still holds up as one of the best puzzle experiences I've ever played. Like, right up there with, Portal 1 and 2.
Yeah.
Chris, you're making my heart sing.
I was very glad I played through this, and I'm very much looking forward to going through to find some more anti-cubes.
Give us out of your 10-point scale.
I would say probably I'd give it an 8 or a 9. I think the general reviews at the time probably had it right. Yeah. There's some shortcomings. The platforming stuff is not very difficult at all.
No.
Once you grasp the idea of looking at a 2D flat plane from different angles, the platforming is pretty simple for the most part. But yeah, it's such a good game.
Yeah, I completely agree. Fez is a game for me that I always heard of, and being around during that time, you could not get away from it. And I remember when Indy the movie came out, I watched part of it, and I remember seeing the part on Fez and everything. But I just always had this personal hate for this game because I associated it with something really stressful in my life. And I'm not going to go into detail what that is because it's kind of personal, but I never really wanted to give it a try because I had this association with this stressful part of my life. And I did actually, it's funny because I've actually listened to the soundtrack way more than I've played the game. I've listened to the soundtrack even before I played the game, and over and over and over and over, for dealing with just when I need to chill out and all kinds of stuff like that, because it's just such a great soundtrack. If you're thinking about playing this game, you're I don't know, just start with the soundtrack. It's on Bandcamp and other stuff, Spotify, Apple Music, whatever, YouTube. Give it a listen because it might help persuade you as well. But Austin was really pressuring me, and he was no, we're gonna get you to play this, and I'm okay. And
I to be fair, I was oh, should I not include this on a game club vote because I don't want to give you shell shock.
Sure.
And you were no, it should be allowed.
Yeah.
I was okay.
Yeah, and I absolutely loved it. I really did. The whole vibe of the game, it wasn't too difficult. The puzzles were pretty fair for the most part, especially the the platforming that you would have to do for the regular cubes, and even some of the anti-cubes were really fair with what they wanted you to do, and they were really easy to figure out. Some of them were really hard, and I didn't get all the anti-cubes. I didn't even get all the regular cubes, to be honest, yet. But the ones that I did get, I don't know, it felt really fair. I love the map system. I love the almost instant respawn after death. I love when games do that, and it did it like Chris mentioned before. It was the perfect timing. It wasn't a snap of the finger, but it was just enough where you're okay. It gives you a little bit of time to think, but not too you're not waiting around. It's just
it's not like the bad comparison where it's too fast would be a bad Flash game where it's
exactly.
the hitbox disappeared and it just instantly reappeared back at the start. It's it's that perfect timing window of just long enough to let you reflect on your death, but not long enough for it to be annoying that you died.
Yeah. And the pixel graphics of this game, my God, were just...
It's so adorable.
Chef's kiss.
Oh, yeah. And how can you not love Gomez when he opens his mouth and smiles like that when he finds a cube? I mean, that dude is adorable. but I absolutely love this game. I recommend everyone checking it out. It's on Switch. It's on all kinds of stuff, Steam, etc. Like, you can find it. I'm sure you have something that can play this game. If you need a 360, let me know. I'll send you mine. But seriously,
thanks, boss.
But seriously, play this game. It is definitely worth playing. I'm so happy I played it. I'm so, like, without Video Game Club, I don't think I ever would have played this. So I'm really, really happy that Game Club exists. Like, this is like what it's for, to play these games that you normally wouldn't have played and to enjoy them. I mean, between this and Goemon, like, whew, like my life has just changed.
Like, I mean, that is just such a. These are games that I try to tell all my friends about. Like, you have to play this game. You have to check this one out, and just no one will listen to me about it. Like, I could throw it up on the channel, like, but if I can just get one, like, if just getting you guys to play it, it's just it feels so good. It feels so good. I'm so happy. I'm just so happy.
But yes, everyone should check this out. 9 out of 10. I mean, it got 9s across the board. Please check it out. We're gonna have to sit down and force Mox to play this once she's able to join us again. Like, it's amazing. Yeah. Any last little bits on Fez before we wrap up here? Go play it.
Yeah, play
definitely go play it. I know that there are times when I have trouble separating art from the artist. I would say this is definitely a time to separate the art from the artist.
Yes.
If you can't stand Phil Fish.
Yes.
And oh my god.
Bad people make good art sometimes, and Phil Fish is not a bad guy. Phil Fish gets a little bit more of a bad rap than he really deserves. Yeah. Not to paint Phil Fish as a saint either. Some of that hate he's very much earned, and he would probably say so himself.
Yeah.
But it's if your problem, if your barrier to entry was ever the personality of Phil Fish, none of that is represented in the game itself. And this is the perfect opportunity to practice that, of separating art from the artist, and just play a great puzzle game.
Yeah.
With some great music from a great artist, and programmed by a guy who supported the heck out of this even after he had left Polytron and was working for Capybara Games. Yep.
Absolutely. So yeah, that was Fez. I hope you enjoyed hearing us talk about it. If you want to join us for the next game, stay put, because our next regular Video Game Club vote just ended, and it was between Metal Gear Rising, Guacamelee, Walking Dead Season 1, all nominated by Chris. And it looks like, by one vote, it's going to be Metal Gear Rising. Thank you, everyone who voted. This is on everything, like PC. I know backwards compatible on Xbox, I'm pretty sure.
I would assume PlayStation as well?
Yeah.
I know it was on PS3. I don't know if it was on... if it ever got like re-released for PS4 or not.
All right, we'll have to post in the Discord where it can be played. Yeah. And thank you everyone who voted, and thank you everyone for joining us live on Twitch, listening on YouTube, or on podcasts. We really appreciate it. Again, just as a reminder, you can catch us here on twitch.tv/BombchuTV every 2 weeks. Usually it's at 2 Eastern on Sundays, but we had to switch things up. Our next stream is going to be on August 15th. And if you can't make the live session, don't worry. Like I said, there's a podcast and YouTube video that you can watch. Austin, Chris, Bombchu, we have Bundle coming out this week? Next week?
Next week?
Yeah, next week. Oh, yeah.
So,
if you're watching on YouTube, it's probably this week.
Yeah. So, watch out for that. Should be interesting. I'm still working on a small project. I just haven't had time yet. We'll see. Hopefully that can happen this month. I hope. Austin, thank you so much for joining us.
Thanks so much for having me.
Of course. And Chris, thank you.
It was a pleasure, as always.
I'm Tyler. This was Video Game Club, episode 29, Fez, and we're out. I'd like to give a special shout out to Michael Slater, Blake Harms, and all of our patrons over on Patreon. Thank you, and thank everyone for watching.